Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. Today's video, I'm going to give you a guide to every single champion or unit in set 5 in preparation for Reckoning launching, right? So just to give you some background, I've played every single day of PvE. I'm a challenger player last set, and I'm just here to offer my opinion on each unit, their items, and in general, some of the comps that I've been running in the late game, which we'll talk about at the end of the video, and showing you some core pieces that I build almost all my comps around, for the most part, with some exceptions, with some taller synergies and stuff like that. If you look up a lot of videos like this, there's tons of people making videos on this topic, and I would normally just abstain from making a video if there's already some good content on the same topic out there. But this one's a special type of video because since the limited amount of time you're able to play on PvE, and the game quality is questionable, and there's not a lot of players, and players actually don't have access to a lot of the data like you would normally when you're playing on live servers, because all these websites have access to Ryze API and you can look at statistics. So because of that, each of these videos are actually pretty unique because you're making most of these assumptions about champions and guides and comps based off of my own personal experience, and anybody else making a video like this are basing a lot of this off of their own personal experience or from people they know and what they've heard. So yeah, that's why I'll be making this video. So let's just get right into it. I have this in order of 1 cost in alphabetical order. So let's just start with Aatrox. Okay, Aatrox. Aatrox is a unit that I usually pass on. I'm gonna be completely honest. The only time I run Aatrox if I get a free 2-star Aatrox and I run him as a frontliner, and maybe I play around redeemed or something. Maybe I get this free 2-star Aatrox, I get a free 2-star Leona really early, and I'll play around this core for the entirety of my early game, and just adding in 1 redeem, just whatever I hit. If I hit Varus, and I have Varus, I have good Varus items. Sometimes I'll carry Syndra, but if you carry Syndra, you definitely cannot carry Syndra stage 4. And even stage 3, it starts to not be as good. So I typically try to pass on Aatrox. But if you want to item hold him, he's really good at holding tank items because he can live for a long time. Putting something like a stone plate or a shadow stone plate on him, and he can live a very, very, very long time. Can actually be a boss hog of a frontline. But I usually don't try to play around Aatrox as my frontline in the early game. I usually try to play around knights or brawlers, stuff like that. So anyways, Gragas is probably the best solo frontline 1 cost in the entire game. He's probably the tankiest 1 cost. He's very tanky. Either him or Leona. He's very similar to like Tom Kench or Braum. He has like damage reduction. So you can item hold tank items on him. I've never carried Grogas. I've seen people try to carry Grogas. It's bad. Don't do it. But he can item hold a lot of good tank items and Sunfire, stuff like that. Don't put Morello on him. He's a terrible Morello holder because he would be much better just applying it with Sunfire. But can be a really solid frontliner in a lot of builds. And to just have, like, I'll have games where I'll go all the way to stage 4 with just Gragas in my build with no synergies with tank items, just because he's a big tanky boy. I won't even have Brawler in. I won't even have Brawler and Dawnbringer, and it can be pretty decent. So yeah, if you get a 2-star Gragas, if I get a 2-star Gragas, I usually play around it until stage 4. All right, Kalista. Kalista is actually a really, really, really good item holder for AD and AP. So if you want to have like Aphelios items, like you have like this and like this and I don't know this, then you're gonna be good, right? You have some decent Aphelios, Draven items, that sort of thing. You're gonna be chilling. Alternatively, I've actually seen this build pop off quite a bit. You build the Velkoz build Jewel Gauntlets and a Sojun. It actually is really nice. So if you don't know, Kalista's spell is an AD spell. It applies AD damage, but she actually has decent AP scaling with that AD ability. You may know what I'm talking about. A lot of champions who have an AD ability will have an AP scaling tag next to it. Well, if it's a percentage, it's usually pretty decent to put an AP item on them. If it's a flat amount, it's pretty bad. For example, Talon in set 4 had a flat amount, whereas like Wukong had a percentage, or Olaf had a percentage attached to an AP percentage, which means that it doesn't feel awful to slam an AP item on them. I mean, honestly, Talon felt fine with it on here because you increase their crit chance as well. So So this build, actually, I've seen it pop off so much. Sojun is really, really, really nice, making her cast quite a bit, and you kind of play her like a caster. So she can actually item hold for Velkoz or any of your AD carries. Cool. Kha'zix pretty decent early game carry. If I get a 2-star Kha'zix and I have a Grogas, I'll normally just play around that core for all the way till stage 4 until I roll on like 4-1 or something like that. He can item hold AD or AP items. So he can hold whatever. His spell is AP, but he is an assassin, so he's pretty decent holding AD items as well. So you can put AD or AP items, whatever you're hitting. Kled is actually a pretty decent frontliner. I typically don't ever play around Cavalier because Cavalier looks kind of shit. But Hellions can be a really decent board to get you to level 7 or to get you to level 8 if you're kind of high rolling the build. But he's a pretty decent frontliner. He actually lives a very long time. You can put AD items if you want to. I typically don't. I like to put like a GA on him if I just have a GA, or I'll put tank items. I typically don't like to put AD items because if you have AD items, like Ziggs is actually a really good AD item holder because he just is able to just sit back there and auto attack all the time. So I typically don't slam AD items on him, even though he has an AD ratio. But if you want to, it's not bad. Typically just put tank items on him. And you only run Kled in Hellion build. Leona is one of the tankiest units, one of the tankiest early game units. Either her or Grogas are probably the tankiest. You can stack tank items on her. You can make her completely unkillable if you want to. I've even seen people put like something like a stone plate and then literally put like they had her as like a really early game AD item holder. You definitely can't do this like stage 3, stage 4, but I've seen people do it and it work out for them. But a lot of times I'll just slam a random tank. By the way, I'm just grabbing this as a general tank item. I'm not saying stone plate's OP or anything, but it's not bad. But I do like putting tank items on Leona if that's the only thing I have to slam. Then I'll slam a tank item on Leona and play around Knights and Leona for my early game. It's pretty decent. I like that. Essentially, whenever I'm picking up units early game, I really like picking up Knights just because some comps and some transitions I like looking for. Lysandra is super good. I like playing around Lysandra a lot. If I get a 2-star Lysandra, I'll play around Lysandra, Coven with Renewers. I'll even just play Lysandra just with Renewer and some Knights because Knights are just really good units. So anyways, but she's a really good item holder for AP items. You can put Blue Buff, you can put Jeweled Gauntlet, you can put Jeweled Gauntlet IE, you can put Death Cap. You can have her item hold Morello. It's not super amazing because her ult is pretty inconsistent. Doesn't ult super early into the fight. You can frontline her or you can decide to backline her. If you backline her and you have Renewer and she's left untouched, she'll actually cast as much as if she was frontlining. So you can either backline her or frontline her. I typically backline her to the side so that she kind of gets a better angle, and you just need to scout which side you need to put her on. But I like putting her like second, third row on the side. And definitely play around Renewer. Coven a lot of times can be bait. But if it fits in really nicely or you hit a really early Morgana, then I would play around Coven because Morgana is a really insane unit. And you can just play around the core of Lysandra, Morgana, and Vlad, so you have Nightbringer. I really like playing around that core. Even if you don't end up putting Coven in, like I usually run Leblanc, but like by the time I get to stage 4, I'm usually trying not to run Coven anymore because you have to run so many like random LeBlanc is just like doesn't fit, you know. A lot of times she just can't fit for like other things you get, like maybe you have like a 2-star Knight that you want to put in or something. So yeah, all right, Poppy is just budget Leona for the most part. She's just less tanky. She does a little bit more damage, but Leona with tank items and Poppy with tank items, usually Leona actually ends up out damaging because she just can live way longer. But if you want to stack your tank items on Poppy early game, then that's fine. I would not go for a reroll Lolly-Poppy build. It's not very good. It's not it. Unless you're just gonna go reroll Ziggs and you hit your Poppy as well, then that's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's a good unit in Hellion, and then it's a decent Knight, but usually just gets replaced as soon as you find a Thresh or a Nautilus. I usually replace Poppy as soon as I hit those. Even like a 1-star Thresh, I might replace a 2-star Poppy just because Thresh is OP. Udyr is a super good AD item holder. He's typically your Jax item holder until maybe you switch him out for Nidalee and make Nidalee your Jax item holder. But he's a really good Jax item holder, and we'll talk about Jax items. Jax items look something like this: Runeens, BT, and then like RFC or Shadow QSS or Shadow Runeens. I mean, yeah, Shadow Runeens, Shadow Runeens, BT. and Shadow QSS are probably Jax's best items. But Jax has pretty flexible items, but we'll talk about Jax whenever we get to him. But yeah, Udyr is just typically your item holder. If you're playing Draconic, he's not the carry of the Draconic build. The Draconic build is Zyra carry, but we won't talk too much about Draconic because it is most certainly getting nerfed. At least the current Draconic build is most certainly getting nerfed because it's the most OP build on the PvE, and it's not even close, baby. And it's really unintuitive. So, cool. Vayne. So Vayne is a pretty decent item holder for AP champs. Also can be a decent item holder for AD champs. I know the meme like Vayne 20 AD lol. But Forgotten actually gives you 35 AD. And so if you run Forgotten and then you have like Shadow BT or something, or I mean Shadow Deathblade or something, or regular Deathblade. Once you have Forgotten, it'll actually deal a lot of damage. So you can still item hold AD items, but if you're item holding AD items, I feel like you have to have this. You have to have Rune Ends, or she just won't deal enough damage. Stage 3. But if you're item holding AD items, and you get this Rune Ends and you 2-star her, you can actually just fast 8 usually around a Vayne, as long as you get a core frontline around your build, and you can hit her synergies pretty decently. You can run the AD version. But Vayne is best at holding AP items, or if you want to actually run the Vayne AP build, it looks something like this. Rageblade, Jeweled Gauntlet, regular Rune Ends. A key thing to know about Shadow Rune Ends, does not proc on hits. So if you run Shadow Rune Ends on Vayne, she will not proc her ultimate on 3 targets. So you definitely want to run regular Rune Ends to get the spread damage on her true damage. It does not work on Shadow Rune Ends, and the best way to get this damage off is just with Shadow Jeweled Gauntlet, because her true damage can crit, and it's the most crit chance, it's the most bang for your buck, because you just won't have enough attack speed and damage if you try to build IE Jeweled Gauntlet. Yeah, because you really need the attack speed, unless you have like tons of Ziggs, but Ziggs got nerfed pretty hard. But this is what the carry version of her looks like. And then if you want to run her as an item holder, I guess it can look something like this, but it's really hard to item hold Jeweled Gauntlet, Rageblade, Rune Ends, because those items don't really fit on another carry other than Vayne. So, and then you kind of have like a mix of AD, AP items, and a lot of the builds don't have like a version where you can have an AP and an AD build, except for maybe Draven build. You can put the Jeweled Gauntlet on your Mordekaiser. But if you actually want to play Vayne carry, this is what it looks like. But if you play this, the items aren't nearly as flexible as if you like hold the AD version. But the AP version is definitely better for sure. All right, we got Vladimir. So Vladimir is another unit I don't mind playing around early game. If I get an early Vlad 2-star, that just means I'm going to be playing around my core of Vlad, Morgana, or not Morgana, Vlad, Lysandra, plus frontline, and then mid game or maybe late stage 2, early stage 3, and then stage 4. Obviously, I play around a core of Morgana and Vlad for Nightbringer. If you high roll some Nightbringers, you could just play 4 Nightbringer early, but typically you'll just play around a core of these 2 units. If Vlad is the only one you hit 2-star, you can essentially just run carry items on your Vlad, which is like, you know, Jeweled Gauntlet, Hodge, Dark Blue buff is actually really good on him. But I usually like to carry my Lysandra more, but if you have to run Vlad carry, it's fine too. But your Vlad cannot carry stage 4. So if you're running Vlad carry, you definitely have to roll for a new comp on stage 4. Whereas Lysandra carry can sometimes get you to level 8 if you have like really good health, decent econ. Lysandra can definitely get you to 8. Alternatively, if you're in that same position, you have Vlad. You will lose a lot of health stage 4 if you try to run Vlad carry. Unless you have like Vlad 3-star and you're running these like Titans and a bunch of tank items on him. I've seen that build work out, but I would not recommend going for Vlad carry. Only if you just high roll it. Cool. Warwick is actually a pretty decent early game unit. I typically only play Warwick if I get like just a 2-star Warwick, and then I might play around him. He's actually really decent at holding AP items. Shadow Hodge is actually a really decent item on him. Any version of Archangel Staff is really good on him, but he's going to be an item holder. There were some Warwick carry builds, but I think that was more a product of nobody knowing how to play, so this build was able to pop off. But he can do some really dirty things early game, and he can be a decent frontline if you're going to play Vayne as your early game carry. Also, it's just like these two units are good. Like Warwick and Gragas are good. And you can just play around those if you just hit a 2-star Gragas, 2-star Warwick, and maybe you play like Assassin's backline, maybe you play Ranger backline. But you can play around him as your frontliner, but typically we'll need to switch him out around stage 4. Cool. Ziggs. Ziggs is actually a really cool and unique unit. Because of the Hellion passive, it gives you attack speed, especially if you get your 5 Hellions in. You can play a couple different builds on him. I mean, even without the Hellion passive, you can play AP, right? So you can item hold him for Karma. Like these are best Karma items right here. You can item hold him for Karma, and it feels really nice. It feels super nice. It's super good. Alternatively, you can item hold for like Aphelios Draven. You know, you can totally item hold like this as well, and it feels just as good or better. If you have 5 Hellion, this build feels really, really, really nice because he has that short cast time, so he's like autoing with Hellion, and then he just lobs his bomb and he keeps autoing. It feels like it's like in his normal auto rotation, so it actually feels really good to play 80 items on him. All right, Bran is one of my favorite early game carries. Even just hitting a single brand is so nice. He is the best item holder in the game for Velkoz or Karma, especially Karma, because blue buff is just so insane. He'll essentially just auto and then ult, auto and then ult. Alternatively, you can put Sojun on him. If he's taking any damage at all, it'll be 1 auto ult. If not, it's 2 auto ults, which is about the same as if he didn't build the item, because it'd be like 3 auto ults. But it's just, you know, you can set yourself in a good spot to play Velkoz, because Sojun is probably Velkoz's best item. Bran feels really, really, really nice, especially in fights he's untouched. He can also be your Morello holder, similar to how like when you'd play Cassio, his ability is very similar to set 3 Cassio. You'd put Morello on Cassio just for the constant tick damage on people. So you can play Morello as well, but typically just toss a Jewel Gauntlet, a blue buff on him, and he will carry your entire early game, even a Brand 1. As long as Brand 1 is untouched, like, yo, Brand 1 with this item, with these items, and then blue buff, it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. He will just pop off like crazy. Because even if he's getting, because this protects him, even a Brand 1, if he's being targeted, you know he's at least going to get like 4 ults off because he's going to de-aggro with GA. It's really, really, really insane. Okay, Hecarim. Hecarim is a pretty decent item holder. I typically don't ever like to play around Cavaliers. Just the synergy is just not amazing. There are some people who really do like playing around Cavaliers. If I hit some 2-star Cavaliers, like I have a 2-star Kled, I hit a 2-star Hecarim, and I have a Sejuani, I'll play around Cavaliers. I'll play around Cavaliers Forgotten, that sort of thing. But I don't like to play around Cavaliers. But Hecarim with tank items can be a super tank in the early game and even mid game. Just a 2-star Hecarim with Forgotten can be really, 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 really tanky. Also, Shadow Morellos is pretty decent on him because he can get, and obviously you're just item holding if you put Shadow Morellos, because it'll make him deal a lot less damage, but his heal still comes out about the same. So yeah, Hecarim is fine. Kennen is one of the best 2 costs in the game. If you're playing around skirmishers or you're playing around Hellions, he is the tits. This is his best build, either Morellos or Shadow Morello, both are fine. And a GA, That's all you need. You put him on the front line. He goes in there. He does his dirty work. He'll ult twice with GA usually. But really, you just need Morello to be procced onto the backline, and you can slowly kill the backline, especially if you have Shadow Morellos, and you can just solo frontline him. If you have Shadow Morellos, you solo frontline him. He'll instantly get the Shadow Morellos on the backline, and if they don't have healing at all, then they will actually die over the course of the fight. Over the course of, especially if you have Hellion. Hellion has so much stall. Skirmisher actually has a lot of stall because you'll have Udyr, who lives a long time. You have the shield you get from Skirmisher, and then you have the GA on him. So that's why Morello's GA is so good, because it just offers you a lot of stall, and you get so much value, especially mid game, out of this Morello, because people won't have healing on their backlines, or just healing innately in their build with like Tarek, stuff like that. So you'll actually just drain them down. Leblanc. There are some like Leblanc carry builds, but I honestly just think it's bait. Leblanc is best used as like a CC bot. She could be decent with like mana items, even though I think her mana cost is actually kind of high. She could still be decent with this, so she casts really early into the fight. But you know, I've seen people run LeBlanc carry builds where they get a 3-star LeBlanc and they put like items like this on her, and she'll it looks really cool when she one-shots 2 of your units, and then maybe she casts twice and she one-shots a couple more. But it's like she's not supposed to be a carry, so I would not recommend playing her as a carry. I have some people who feel like she should be, but I don't. Nautilus is one of the best units in the game just because the synergies are insane. Ironclad is probably the best synergy in the game, either that or Nightbringer. And then Knights are just like really easy to fit in, and you can play around a core of 4 Knights, mid game, early game, and in certain scenarios where it just the stars align, you can actually play Knights late game, like 4 Knights late game, if you just had really good units. So yeah, so keep that in mind. That's why he's so good. You don't put any items on him, but his synergies are just so insane. But I don't ever put any items on Nautilus, but as soon as I get a Nautilus, I buy him, and I almost always play around him if I have him, just because the synergies are insane. But if I know I'm going to roll at 7 and I have better units and it's costing me econ, I won't hold this unit early game, because I'm going to roll at 7 and I know that I'll hit. So yeah. Sejuani is a fine frontline unit. I only add this to my early game build if I'm playing around Vlad usually, because she can be pretty decent. She's tankier than the other units you will hit at the same time. But if I'm only running 2 Nightbringer, it's always Morgana with my Vlad early game, not Sejuani. But maybe I'll just like toss in Sejuani because I hit a Sejuani 2-star, and I'll run Sejuani. Sejuani is going to be tankier than Lee Sin for the most part, as a unit to add. But mid game you can hit like Lee Sin 2-star, and I'd always run Lee Sin over Sejuani usually once you have Lee Sin 2-star, or once you get the mid game. If they both don't fit into your build. Yeah, but she's really good to play around as one of your early game frontliners, and then she's usually just a spot holder for Darius if you're playing a Nightbringer build. Unless you want to play the actual 6 Nightbringer build, then you can run her in that build, and you can actually get Cavalier with Rel in the 6 Nightbringer build. So, but typically she's just placeholder for Darius or placeholder for Lee Sin, typically. Set is really terrible. Unlikely he's going to get changed. They keep buffing him a tiny bit on PvE, but he's pretty bad. I would not play around him unless you're going to play Draconic. I think he's bad just because Draconic is so good. And so if they make him any better, then Draconic would be OP. And it already is OP. So I think it's unlikely he gets buffed, but he feels pretty bad. He's worse than Grogas, and he's a 2-cost, and he's definitely way worse than Grogas. And what's the other one? Warwick. He's probably the worst. He's definitely the worst brawler. I would not play around Set. So Soraka's pretty good. Soraka's pretty good. I like playing a build where she has Shadow Morello. I think she's a really, really, really good Shadow Morello holder, especially if you're going to play around Renewers. Sometimes I'll just randomly hit, like sometimes early game, I'll hit a Lysandra, and then I'll just hit a Grogas 2-star, and instead of playing around Lysandra Vlad as my core Renewers for the early game, I'll play around Soraka as my Soraka Lysandra, and I'll run Lysandra as carry, and I'll play Lysandra as carry and Soraka as like this kind of like utility bot with like some cool items like this, you know. And so she's casting a lot, and she's getting that Shadow Morello over everything because her spell is pretty wide. Alternatively, some people do play Assassin Soraka, especially like Soju plays Assassin Soraka, where you do something. You do something like this. You do this, and you get that, and then maybe a mana or GA or something. But I'm not a big fan of this build, if I'm being completely honest. But you can play Assassin Soraka. She can deal some pretty decent damage, but that's like a Soraka 3-star build, very niche scenario. But typically, she's just going to item hold your Morello, maybe a blue buff for you, for whenever you transition to like a Karma build or something. Also, she can just stay in your whole build the entire time if you end up playing around like Renewers. If you end up playing around like Ivern Heimerdinger late game, or you play around like Dawnbringers because you're playing Karma carry, you can actually just keep her in your build. And so if you actually think you're going to be keeping her in your build and transitioning to Karma, then you'd have your blue buff on your carry, which would be Lysandra. You'd have like, if you think you want to transition to Karma, then your build would look something like this. Not how I just showed. It would look more like this, because you'd want the carry items on Lysandra because you can just straight 1-to-1 sell Lysandra for Karma rather than having to sell both of these and remaking Soraka. But you can remake Soraka. Don't feel bad about it. It's really easy to remake. It's not a very contested unit usually late game. So it's pretty easy to remake if you need to. Okay, what are we on? Syndra, like I said, you can play around her as a carry early game, but she's really just a solid utility champion. If you're carrying her early game, I would typically switch out stage 4. Don't try a carry build on her it doesn't work. At least no one's figured out a carry build. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, she's buffed and that's an actual build. But don't play Syndra carry. It is not set 3 Syndra. Don't do it. Thresh is one of the best units in the entire game. He is so insane. If you don't know what Thresh does, Thresh hooks his furthest target and he CCs them for a long ass fucking time. He's really good. Don't ever put any items on him. You don't need to, but if you can fit Thresh into your build, it feels really nice. I try to fit Thresh into my build in most games if I can, because the CC is so nice and people don't position for it. And even if they do position for it, there's so much way for you to get back on access with CC that you can just like overload somebody and they're never able to dodge, their backliner's never able to dodge your CC, and Thresh is just another layer to that. Trundle is fine as a skirmisher. He's only ever in your late game build if you're playing around 4 Dragon Slayer with skirmishers. But typically he's just like an early game champ. He's pretty decent with like Shadow TG. It's usually like the best thing I see work on him is if you get a Shadow TG, you play it on him because he's pretty decent with AP or AD items. He can be an item holder, but you can't item hold this champion stage 4. If you're item holding him as your carry, you need a roll for like Jax or something to switch him out for a new comp. But he can be pretty decent. Varus, he's okay. He's a decent item holder. He has really good AD ratios. So if you get like, if you get like Aphelios items, it's pretty nice. So you can item hold him all the way to level 8 if you want to. Like if you have a really good, you're playing around a core of like a redeemed build, like you're playing like redeemed knights, playing like this. You're playing redeemed and you're playing knights and you got a ranger or some shit. You got Ashe. Like you can play around a core of like this. Maybe you get like Ashe and you play like 2 other knights and you have 4 knights, 3 redeemed, 2 ranger. Can feel pretty nice. Varus is really good transition units. I've played a couple Varus carry games. It did not feel that amazing, but maybe he'll get changed by that time. It's just like I would rather be playing Aphelios 2-star than I would be playing Varus 3-star. You know what I mean? So there's really no point. Victor is mostly a utility unit. I've seen people try to play some carry builds. He can item hold like carry items like this. He can item hold stuff like this, but it just doesn't feel that good. If you do, you definitely have to roll for a new carry on stage 4. I'm a big fan of like this type of build. Where is it? Dark Sojun, because like you don't care about Victor's damage. You care about his utility and his shield, and this does Dark Sojun. Basically, it cuts your damage in half, but it doesn't cut your shielding that you'd get or the utility you get from your ability. And he actually can provide a lot of stall, especially if you're playing around like Velkoz or something right here. He can provide a decent amount of stall, but typically if you're running Victor as your utility unit, you end up switching it out for Zyra because Zyra is just infinitely better. So yeah. All right, cool. We got Ashe. Okay, Ashe is going to be a utility champion. The only time I ever see her played as carry is, you'll have something like this. You have something like this, and the only reason why you'd play this is because you're playing Draconic and you're playing Zyra carry. And you're actually carrying your Zyra as like you're carrying Ashe, but like, where's Zyra, man? Zyra, Z, Zyra. Because you'd have like the Sojun Rageblade on her, Sojun Rageblade, Morello or something, and you're kind of like running dual carry, and that's like the thought process between putting AD items on Ashe, even though she has no AD ratios, because like you need somebody to have consistent damage on your team. I'm not a huge fan of this build. It is the best build in the game right now, by the way, but it's not because of Ashe, it's because of Zyra. It is most certainly getting nerfed. And so typically if you want to play Ashe, you kind of play her how you play Zyra. You'd play her like this, and she would just be, if you're going to play Draconic, honestly, I couldn't tell you what the Draconic build's going to be, because the Draconic build right now is these items on Zyra and then 80 items on Ashe, but that build is most certainly getting nerfed. But if you're running Ashe as like a unit you're going to play with Aphelios, you'd run these items and you'd eventually switch her out for Kindred and just run these same items on Kindred, or maybe this Rageblade goes to your Aphelios, because Rageblade is probably Aphelios' best item. So yeah, that's Ashe. Katarina, the only person I know who plays Katarina carry is Solus, and it looks something like this. I suppose you could play Shadow QSS, but maybe that's not enough damage. Honestly, the only person who runs this build is Solus. But a build like this would be really nice. If you have blue buff, she insta-cast. I used to think blue buff was a bait on her, but actually watching her fight, it makes her to where she throws her knife, lands, deals the damage, and then instantly throws her knife. So she'll throw the knife, land, and throw the knife. And that actually gives you a lot of utility because you're not in the same spot for a long time. So maybe it makes it to where you don't have to build QSS. But her best core is definitely going to be blue buff, IE, and then I really don't know third item because no one plays Katarina. I only play Katarina as a transition unit for like Karma or something, you know, because she can hold. She's a really good blue buff holder. I'll play her as a transition carry, or also I have this like hidden dark technology build where I play I play Ryze as one of my carries, and I play Katarina until I hit Viego because she's my forgotten assassin that I need for the build, and she's just there for Viego. Okay, Lee Sin, he's gonna be a utility unit. The only comps you run him in are Skirmisher and Nightbringer Aphelios build. He's actually really decent. Like he'll randomly top in damage because his AoE is really big. I will put like sometimes if you just like get an API, like you're running like a pure AD build, like you're running like Aphelios, and you already have like full items on your Diana. So you have no AP item holder and you just get like a Jeweled Gauntlet late game. I'll just toss a Jeweled Gauntlet on him and like sometimes he'll just pop off and you'll just be like, what just happened? So yeah. Anyways, Lulu. Wow, this video is gonna be so long. Okay, Lulu, you would never put any items on her. She's good. Like when you read her ability, you're like, wow, it's insane. And maybe she'll get buffed, or maybe some of the other mystics will get nerfed. But she's always my last pick for mystics. Like I always want Lux or Ryze or Kindred or Morgana. Morgana is probably the best unit in the game. So she's just the worst mystic, but she's not bad. I would never put any items on her. But maybe if you did, like you have leftover items, maybe an item, maybe a build like this is nice. I don't know. She gives attack speed to your guys, and she's a really good defensive unit. Like if you're playing like Aphelios or something, but it's just really hard to fit her in. Like because you can put your carries over here and you can put her next to them, and then she'll protect them, similar to how she's always worked. But she doesn't knock up the assassins; she'll polymorph them. So it can be really good. It's just like you just would rather run every single other mystic over her, but she is good, so it's weird. All right, Lux is one of my favorite units in the game. You don't put any items on Lux, but if you want to put any mana items on her, fine. Like if you want to backline her and you want to put like Sojun Deathcap, like that can be fine, but I would never try to do that if she always gets leftover items. The hidden tech is frontlining her and playing like this. Like let's say you're playing I don't know, I'm just gonna put like a random unit here. Okay, let's say you're playing like this and you're playing I'm just gonna put random front lines, right? So you have this like fat front line, and then you have your like solo carry back here, and maybe like a mystic or a utility unit right here. If you play in a way, let me just put rel here for if you play in a way like this is not a real comp, by the way. I just have a fucking Kled right here and a cannon. But if you put your carry, your backliners, and your Lux on the same side, and you frontline your Lux will actually get insane value. It'll basically be like your whole frontline gets 2 lockets because she'll ult across and then it'll come back. And your team most likely won't move because a lot of people will position their frontline straight up like this if they have a lot of frontliners. So your frontliners will just like stay here in a like kind of like like football teams hitting each other, or phalanxes hitting each other in like Greek warfare. And your Lux will just sit here shielding them constantly until she dies. But she'll at least get 1 cast off, and if she gets 1 cast off, she's done her job. And if you're worried about like assassins protecting your carry, you just put Rel on the other side. Because you're going to play, we'll talk about Rel in a minute, but you're going to be playing Rel almost in every comp. And Rel can just shield and peel for your carry if you want to position this way. Alternatively, you can do something like this where it's kind of lame, where you get different types of value, where like you can put your rel over, you basically can do the same thing. You can put your rel over here. You can put your rel over here and she'll shield across and stun across this way. Basically doing the same thing Lux does, but in the opposite way. And then Lux will shield your carry and shield across the team. I just in general prefer doing the combo like this. I think Lux is really insane. Okay, cool. Morgana, probably the best unit in the entire game. I don't know if she'll be nerfed. I don't know what they're going to do to her, but she is just so absolutely disgusting. And all you need to do is this. G8. And then, like, whatever team you're running with her, you just do this. you just do this. You solo frontline her. The enemy's team frontline will walk in. They'll damage her. She'll cast her ult. She'll go into GA and she'll complete her ult, doing both parts of her ult, Morelloing their entire frontline and parts of their backline who had to walk up, Morelloing half of their team and halfway killing their frontline because her spell actually deals a lot of damage because her Nightbringer will proc before she goes into her GA, and then she'll hit them with the bonus Nightbringer damage. It is so disgustingly broken. Anyways, if you can fit Morgana in your build, you play Morgana. I fit Morgana in tons of build, but obviously her best build is going to be a Nightbringer Aphelios. Really insane. If you want to play around Morgana, that's a good way to play the game, but maybe she'll get nerfed into the ground. Nidalee has been nerfed 5 billion times because she was insanely unbalanced on release on PvE. So she's been nerfed into the ground. Mid game, you can run her as like, if you're not hitting Jax, you can put items. If you're rolling for Jax and you're not hitting Jax, you can put Jax items on her and run her as a mid game carry, but you usually take her out. She's kind of scuffed after stage 3 as a carry. But late game, she might still fit into your build if you're running a 6 skirmisher build, and you can run her as like a third carry. She can like randomly pop off, but for the most part, she's just a mid game carry if you're not hitting Jax, or an early game carry if you just hit a really early Nidalee, and she actually smurfs. She actually smurfs all the way until mid stage 4, so she can be really good. And she's not awful stage 4 with items, but she's not the best. All right, Nocturne, he's not bad. Nocturne, he's our man. If he can't do it, no one can. That sort of thing. Nocturne is he's not bad. I don't like to play Nocturne builds, but his build looks something like this. Just attack speed on, doesn't have to be Rage Blade, and then like Shadow QSS is really good. So you can play something like this, and it'll be pretty nice. Also, either of these can be Shadow items. I wouldn't want to make Shadow Rage Blade because he just loses too much health with Shadow this and Shadow that and all that hoopla, but Shadow BT can be really nice as well. But I really like Shadow QSS. I don't play a lot of Nocturne builds, but he's fine. A lot of people have found success with him, but it's really you have to 3-star him or you'll just get eaten. Nunu, he's just good for A-bomb build. That's really all he's good for. Or if you're running like a 4 brawler mid-game build, he's fine, but don't itemize him. Pantheon, he is good in skirmisher build, and that's about it. Sometimes you fit him in for Dragon Slayer because he does have a little bit of utility because he is pretty tanky naturally because he has kind of that Braum shield going on. You can randomly throw like 80 items on him if you're playing Jax and you have nobody to put, and you just get these 80 items and your Jax is already fully stacked and maybe someone else you're running as a side carry is already fully stacked. Then you can run 80 items on him and sometimes he can pop off. It's really kind of position diff. But yeah, typically he's just a synergy bot. Riven, okay, maybe she's going to get buffed big time before launch, but Riven right now is just trash. She's like a mid-game carry. She's just inferior in every way to Yasuo as a carry. Yeah, I wouldn't play Riven. I've never played a single game of Riven carry. I've tried to, and it was so bad. All right, here we go. We got Yasuo. Yasuo is an actual build that people play. If you 3-star Yasuo, you can play something. I think the build is something like this. And then after that, you can put like IE, you can do GEA, it's not enough damage. You can do Shadow Hodge, you can do Deathblade, you can also do Jeweled Gauntlet. There was a build that actually won a 3-star Yasuo build with Jeweled Gauntlet, actually won a game in the Mort Dog tournament. So yeah, this can be pretty decent. Typically though, you just play him as an item holder and all that good stuff. Yeah, you usually just play him as an item holder, and you play him as an item holder for Aphelios. He is a really insane item holder for Aphelios, and I mean, you can have, I mean, whatever build you want to, whatever build you're trying to play Aphelios. He is best used as an item holder for Aphelios because he's your Nightbringer. So you essentially just run 4 Nightbringer mid game, and then you sell him on stage 5 for when you're rolling for your Aphelios, or level 8, whatever on stage 4. Yeah, all that good stuff. So he's typically an item holder, but there are some Yasuo carry builds. You essentially just play around Nightbringer, Legionnaire, and you just stack some really nice items on him. Really good with RFC. Okay, Zyra, you run her in 2 cases. Currently, she is the carry of Draconic build, and the build is just this. Sojun, Rageblade +1. That is the build. You can do double Sojun, you can do double Rageblade, you can do an AP item here, like Jeweled Gauntlet's really nice. So it's usually something like this is her build. It's almost certainly getting nerfed. The other build that you play her in is Velkoz, and you just run her with no items or just leftovers, and you just put her in a random spot. Or not random spot, but you scout each round to try to put her on the opposite side of her carry. Her ability will go across to the furthest unit, similar to Thresh, and will hit everybody in the path as well. So yeah, that's her. Aphelios, probably the best forecast carry in the game. Maybe they're going to nerf him or Nightbringer because he is just better than Draven in every single way possible currently. His best item is going to be Rage Blade. Most people think you have to have BT, but you really don't. You really don't. And so Rage Blade is going to be his best, and then you just put AD or AP. I mean, AD and more attack speed on him. Whatever you get, you know, if you get something like this, you're gonna be fine. If you get something like this, you'll be just fine. You don't have to have BT on him because he has so much survivability built into Nightbringer. Like, you can honestly just build Glass Cannon. QSS is bad. Don't build QSS. There's not enough like CC that happens that early in the fights, and CCs are kind of whatever. But if you wanted to, you could play something like this if you really wanted to. But I think it just makes you too weak. So so it's really just attack speed and AD items. You don't have to play BT or GA, but they're fine if you want to. GA is definitely not as good this set because there's just less backline access, less the fight's over in 2 seconds because you get pulled by Aatrox. Less stuff going on like that. Diana is easily one of the best units of the game. It's either Diana or Morgana. I'll tell you guys which are the best unit. I mean Diana, Morgana, Arel. If you can fit these in your comp, they're just such insane units. And she is no different. Her best item is oddly enough Frozen Heart, because she'll jump to the backline and she'll pull everybody to her, and you can just if you pick the right side and you get on someone's like Aphelios or Draven or Velkoz or whatever, and you pull them in and they get hit by this Frozen Heart. It's really insane. Also, Shadow Frozen Heart is really good. Basically, you just put leftover items on her, but her best items are Frozen Heart, Shadow Frozen Heart. Morello is fine, but there's usually just better Morello holders. If you want to carry her and you want to just like toss, you know, maybe you actually have Assassin in, you toss an IE on her. I will totally do that all the time. But she really doesn't need it. She deals so much damage without it that just something like usually when I get to my end game build, usually her build looks something like this. It'll usually look something like this in like random third item. And this can be like really insane, especially if you're playing an AP build and you just get the AP shred on the back line. Maybe you're playing like, I don't know, you're playing Karma or something. I mean, she doesn't really fit in Karma build, but you get what I'm saying. You can get some like really nice shred on their back line, make them really squishy. It feels so nice. Diana, if you can fit Diana in your build, it is so great. All right, now we're on to budget Aphelios, which is Draven. I imagine they're going to do something to make Draven more in line with Aphelios before launch. So assuming that they do, let's give you a build. Okay, Draven, you're going to be playing around 3 Forgotten typically. There is a 6 Forgotten build, but I think it is trash. I think it's trash unless you get a Forgotten spot, because there are a lot of shitty Forgotten units. Usually when I play Draven, I play around the core of these units. I play around, as my Forgottens, I will play Thresh and I will play Ryze. Because we already talked about how OP Thresh is, and then Ryze is a really decent unit as well as he's a Mystic. So he fits really nicely into your build because you can just slot in like Morgana or something to finish out your Mystics, and you get a Mystic for free. So typically play around this core, and then I switch out Thresh once I hit a Viego and I have good items for him, or I hit a Viego 2-star. So you play around the core of Ryze and Thresh until you hit your Viego. Viego can be really good, but you do have to play pretty sweaty and scout every round. Also, if you have a Viego in your build and you're able to fit in Diana, I don't know what's happening, and you're able to fit in Diana, then you have free Assassin, and maybe your Diana and Viego can actually do a lot of damage. Maybe you can get some carry items on your Viego. Maybe you can get an IE on your Viego, and he just one-shots people. Viego is really nice, though. He basically acts the same way Thresh does. He CCs a backline. Even if you don't kill with Viego, he still CCs a backliner for a long time. So he's just like Thresh. He's like, offers he offers the same thing that Thresh can offer to your team, but he has like a higher end. He has a way higher ceiling, because once you get items on him, you 2-star him, he can actually carry your team. Whereas Thresh can't. Thresh is only a utility carry. But Draven, let me hit you up with the Draven items. Draven is going to be really good with Shadow BT. It is really disgusting. Shadow BT, Shadow Runeans, and this is pretty decent. It looks pretty low damage, But if you have other people who can deal damage on your team, it's fine. Like maybe running that Diana Viego build. But this typically isn't the build. I do like this as a core, and then just playing like IE, you know, IE or Deathblade. I really like RFC because Draven, another one of Draven's problems, he has to walk up a lot because his attack range is 1 lower than Aphelios. So he'll have to walk up a lot less, which is really nice. Also, Shadow, this is really nice. Also, the other thing is Draven will drop his axes if he walks onto a different hex. I haven't really felt that, but I have to feel that that's pretty meaningful when he drops his axe. But I can't really tell when the fight's happening because it looks like my Draven catches most of his axes even without this item. But this item is just really nice for him not walking into like CC range and just kind of being able to stay in the corner or right here. Because if not, he always walks. If without RFC, he always like walks to here or here or here or something, and he'll get CC'd. So it's also really nice just to be able to corner him and maybe have like somebody to protect him over here versus assassin. So maybe he'll like dodge out on a Diana ult because Diana gets stuck here or something. But if you didn't have that, then he would walk to here and get caught in the ult. So playing around a core of like these items are really nice. BT is very nice because he doesn't heal enough with Legionnaire. Maybe they'll change that and maybe you don't need to build BT. But that's why people were building BT on Aphelios, was basically just because it was really good on Draven. But Aphelios doesn't need it because he has that fat shield and he has all that range, so he has so much survivability. That's why he's just like, Aphelios is just, I mean, Draven is just bad Aphelios right now. Okay, Ivern is really good in Karma build because he's an invoker. He gives you the invoker and you play around like this in Volibear. He's a really decent unit. You don't ever put any items on him. Sometimes I'll put leftover attack speed items on him and it actually feels pretty good, but I would never itemize him on purpose. But I have run like an 80 carry build when I'm playing Karma because I got 80 items and I was playing an AP build, so I just tossed him on Ivern and he like topped in damage sometimes, which was really insane. But I would never itemize him on purpose. He's just there that you put in Karma build, or if you hit a Volibear and you just want to play around a core Volibear Ivern, his CC is really insane. Maybe it's going to get nerfed because it's really wide. And Volibear is probably one of the best units in the game. So he's just a really solid unit because he synergizes well with Karma and he synergizes well with Volibear. And Karma and Volibear are both really, really good units. Karma is one of the best carry and Volibear is probably the best legendary. Okay, Jax. Jax is a really, really interesting unit because he's an Ironclad and he's a Skirmisher. So he is the Skirmisher carry if you're playing Skirmisher build. And his best in slot is going to look something like BT is really, really, really insane on him. Shadow Runeans is really nice. And then you want like RFC, or you want like a GA or Shadow QSS. Shadow QSS is super good. Like these items are really nice. Basically, you need him to not get stuck. So you either want Shadow QSS or you want RFC or Shadow RFC, because he'll just get stuck meandering around and he'll just get CC and kited to death. So you need a way for him to not get kited. So either Shadow QSS or RFC. You definitely don't have to have either of these on it. Like this could be a GA instead, but BT is definitely gonna be your best bet. You could have a regular Runeans, but Shadow Runeans is gonna be your best bet. I've also popped off with a build that looked like this. Super budget, but I ran a build like this and it popped off. This item is actually really decent on Jax, specifically with Runeans or Shadow Runeans, because you can constantly keep resetting it to get both effects. This can be really nice, but you want to look for that original core that I just showed. But as I said, Jax is a weird unit because he's an Ironclad. Sometimes you fit him into other builds. Most of the time when you play Ironclad, you play around a core of these two units. But sometimes you can play this unit with him. If like, you're in the final round and you don't have an Ironclad spat, there's two people left and they're both playing Aphelios or Draven, then throw in this Ironclad. Take out your Mystic and throw in Ironclad because all their damage is 80. So Jax is a weird unit. I typically buy a Jax every time I see it because I might temporarily run him as a placeholder for Rel, or I might run 3 Ironclad because there's a lot of AD players. Even if I'm playing like a different build, even if I'm playing like Velkoz or something, I might play Jax. But typically Jax is the Ironclad you don't play unless you're playing Skirmisher. So just know that. Okay, Karma. Karma is one of the premier carries. You have to play blue buff. If you're not playing blue buff, like you should just play Velkoz for the most part. Yeah, you really need blue buff. Blue buff is really, really, really insane. And then you put on something like this. It's just really nice. This is probably her best build. If you do Shadow Jewel Gauntlet, you have to do... If you do Shadow Jewel Gauntlet, you have to do... It's a little awkward because you have to run Gunblade, and then like if you don't crit, your damage is just so little. Alternatively, you could just do neither of those, and you could just do I don't know, double death cap or something. That's kind of hard to get, but like a death cap and a Hodge, this is fine. Every time you roll damage, you'll pop off. Every time you roll healing, it's okay. Or Shadow Hodge can be nice because you do a lot of AoE, but typically you just need AP and a blue buff on her, and you want as much damage as possible. She just doesn't deal enough damage with Gunblade, and she has some healing in Dawnbringer, so just try to rely on your Dawnbringer a little bit more. It's really hard to play 4 Dawnbringer without Dawnbringer spat. If you have Dawnbringer spat and you want and you can play 4 Dawnbringer, it's really good. But the problem with Karma is that like all the Dawnbringer units kind of suck. Because Riven's a carry, Nidalee's a carry, Kha'zix is a carry, Grogas is a 1 cost, so you don't play late game. The only time you'd play Grogas is if you have Volibear, and it just like feels really nice. So the only nice units that are actually utility units and not carries in their own right is Garen and Soraka. So you typically just play 2, and you play Soraka until you hit Garen, and then you play around Garen. But if you get a Dawnbringer spat, and sometimes you'll end up playing 3 Dawnbringers because Soraka is a good unit. Maybe you're playing around Renewers as well. It gets a little awkward, but it gets a little awkward. Let's just say that. So typically you play 2 Dawnbringer, but if you get a Dawnbringer spat, 4 Dawnbringer is great with all that healing. But Dawnbringer is just typically inferior to Nightbringer in every way possible. Nightbringer units are better, and it's a shield, so you get instant. Dude, I get so tilted reading the difference between Nightbringer and just Nightbringer is so much better. But Karma is legit. Blue buff, AP items. Cool. Mordekaiser is really hard to run as a primary carry, but he is just an absolute hoss. He's really good with tank items, and if you want to run him as a carry, you just toss a Jeweled Gauntlet and then random items after that. Just tank, survivability, Shadow QSS can be really good, but if you run Shadow QSS, you'll need like Warmogs or something, because then he'll be so puny. But yeah, you typically can run him just as like this insane beefy frontline with Draven. He'll be your 2 Legionnaire if you're running. Typically when I play Draven, I just do 2 Legionnaire, and I just make sure I get some attack speed on Draven so he doesn't miss 4 Legionnaire, because you're having to run a bunch of trash units. But he's typically your Legionnaire that you'll play with Draven. And since he's a Dragon Slayer and you're playing Draven build, it's really easy to fit in Diana. And you get Dragon Slayer and you get that extra AP on your team, so it's really nice. And you just stack tank items. It's really hard to play solo carry Mordekaiser. I've even had a 3-star Mordekaiser game, and I still got 2nd place because I just got kited to death. So he's typically your alternative carry, or just an insane frontline unit. But Mordekaiser is really good. I mean, I'll even run Mordekaiser in other builds as a 2-star unit. Like I'll buy Mordekaiser when I see him. I'll be playing Aphelios, and I'll just have a random 2-star Mordekaiser in my build because he'll just like item hold for like Darius or something. Another tank that I can play later in those builds. So, but he's just like a really beefy boy. So he's another one of these units I just buy every time I see. Rel is easily the best, most consistent frontline unit in the game. Other than like legendaries who have like insane abilities, obviously. Rel is really nice. If you don't know what she does, she creates a link with her furthest ally. Everyone in that link and around 1 hex of that unit. So if Rel is right here, everybody around will gain a shield, and enemies in that area will be stunned. So you can basically hit the whole map. She's really good with assassins. There's 2 ways that you can position her. This is basically the 2 ways you position her. Let's say you're playing Aphelios, right? And you're playing Diana. Okay, if you're scared of your Aphelios getting CC'd or getting like, you're versus an enemy, they have a Diana or a Viego or whatever. If you need your Aphelios to be peeled, then you just put her on the opposite side, and you make sure your assassin is on the same side as your Rel. So whenever your Diana jumps, she'll be on the same side, so your Rel will always link to your backline. Alternatively, you just switch the positions. If you don't want to peel your Aphelios or whoever you want to peel, and you want the stun to go on your Diana because you just want, you're going to get the right side, and you have your Diana jump to their backline, CC, and then you want Rel to link to her as well, then you just position this way. And then your Rel will always link to your assassin, and it'll give you a shield for your front line, who's like in this area, and then it'll also double CC whoever Diana hits. So if the enemy is running an Aphelios carry and your Diana gets on him, basically their Aphelios doesn't get to play the game because you have Rel and Diana. So it's really important to just play around this. You typically don't put any items on Rel. You'll just put like random tank items. If you built tank items earlier in the game, you want to build it. I've played one game where I had like crazy tank items on her and she actually kind of popped off. But it's not quite like Sejuani where you just throw like a Morello and like crazy items on her. You can't put Morello on her even though her spell hits a whole board because her spell does 0 damage. It's just CCs. But Rel is one of the best units in the game. Ryze is typically just a utility unit that you throw in like Draven build, or maybe you have like a blue buff and you're playing Aphelios and you're just like, okay, well I'll play this guy for a minute because he can offer a lot of utility. He's a decent Morello holder as well, but Morello is just better on like Morgana and Volibear. So, but he can hold Morello if you know you're gonna switch him out. Okay, I play a Ryze Dark Technology build. I am the only person I know who plays Ryze carry. I know people have tried it. But if you want to play Ryze carry, let me show you how to play it real quick. It's really hard to play any other way than the way I'm going to show you. But the build, you absolutely have to have Shadow Blue buff. And you frontline Ryze. You put a GA and then random damage item. Not Shadow GA. It has to be regular GA. Because the way that this item works is... you get 50 mana if you were, unless it gets nerfed, by the way. You get 50 mana if you're below 40% HP, I believe. And you get 50 mana, right? Ryze's maximum mana is 50. So if you have Shadow Blue buff and you frontline him with a GA, then he'll instantly get low and he'll sit there and he'll just, every auto attack will be a stun. And you'll just chain CC their entire team. And if he de-aggroes with that amount of HP, he'll just sit there the whole fight and the enemy team can't move at all if nobody's aggroing Ryze. And he's stunned. So even if they are aggroing him, he'll at least get like 3 stuns off before he goes in the GA. And then as soon as he comes out of GA, he's still at low health. So he'll just be machine gunning out so he gets to de-aggro. So play around a core of this and you can add AP item third. So you can just do Death Cap or Jeweled Gauntlet. I'd never do Shadow Jewel Gauntlet because he gets too low too fast. I don't really like gun. I have not tried the Gunblade build, but it sounds counterintuitive. This build is also really good. I've not yet been able to try this build, but in theory, it sounds really good. But let me tell you, this build felt the best, actually. Archangel Staff, Shadow Blue buff, GA. I got so much damage off. But the build I usually end up building is this because it's the most flexible item. But again, if you want to play Ryze as a primary carry, you absolutely have to have blue buff. And the units I play with Ryze, I'll make a whole Ryze guide eventually. The units you play around with Ryze is this. Viego and Thresh. And then until you can hit your Viego, you just play Katarina here. And you just throw whatever random items you hit. But the best items in your build are definitely going to be this. And you play around Diana, Viego, and then the rest of this is just really solid frontline, other Mystics, and other Ironclads. The cool thing about Ryze as a carry is he's a Mystic. So it's kind of like set 3 Cassio, but you play him way different, and he frontlines. And I like to put Diana and him on the same side. One thing that does suck about playing Ryze carries, you have to be really, really, really sweaty with your positioning. You have to, every single round, be moving around. And I like to put Thresh right next to Ryze, just in case you guess wrong. Like, if you guess wrong... and let's do Rel. If you guess wrong, and your Diana goes over here, and your Ryze is on this side, because you want your Ryze on the same side as their carry. So let's say they're playing an Aphelios build. You want to position your Ryze in front of their carry, because the way Ryze spell works is it spreads to nearby ally or nearby allies that he hits, or nearby enemies that he hits, right? But for them, it's allies. And so if you're jumping here and you get really good positioning, you're just turbo fucking whoever their backline is over here, then it's amazing, right? But if you guess wrong, at least you have your Aphelios, or your Aphelios, or not your Aphelios, but your guy over here, Viego. You have him jumping to the backline, and you have your Thresh CC in that side, and you have your Rel CC in that side. Be really nice. And that can be really great as well. If you're not playing the Assassin version and there's a Draven version of this build, essentially you just don't play these guys and you play Draven, because like the only reason why you do that is if you got AD items, and you'd play around, sorry, I'm going a little bit too in depth on this. You play around Draven, Mord, and Nautilus. Draven, Mord, and Nautilus. Positions a little bit differently. You'd position like this because you want your Rel shield and CC to go onto your Ryze, because even if Ryze gets low and he's shielded, he'll still get the bonus from blue buff. And then you also play, your build actually just looks like this. You also play this. And you just put your 80, like, the only reason why you play this version over the assassin version I just showed is because you got like really insane Draven items. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you still have a spot for another Ironclad or Mystic. So this build's really nice because you have these you have the Legionnaire for Draven, you have this guy, you have 2 Mystics, you have 2 Ironclad, and at this point you can just decide, do you want more Ironclads or do you want more Mystics? That's basically what you just decide here. Or do you want a Dragon Slayer for more AP? Because you can also just put Diana here. You can put Morgana here. I usually just play Morgana because she's so insane. And you play around the core of these units. The reason why we play Lux over Morgana here initially is because the way that this works. Because if Ryze gets low, but he's shielded, he'll still get the bonus. You'll get some really insane shit. And you have to make sure the position's way of Draven on the same side as your Lux. It makes it really hard to position because you have to constantly be changing your position in your Lux. So what will happen is Lux will shield across your whole front line. And if Ryze is in that threshold and then Rel does it, he'll have like 2k effective HP, but he'll be under that 40% HP threshold, but he'll basically have 2k health worth of shielding and health. And so he'll just get so much value off of that same side. And I usually put Thresh on this same side over here so that Thresh will hook this direction because your Ryze will be CCing back here, just in case you guess the wrong side. And I'll put Nautilus on this side as well to CC the units over here, because you don't want to like double up Ryze and Nautilus and Thresh CC on the same person, because it just wouldn't be very good. And so you can do that. Alternatively, you can do like this, and Rel will always shield your Ryze. Will always 100% shield your Ryze because she'll be next to him. Unless she travels up here. So that's where that can be a little scuffed. So I usually just position like this, get the big shield, get the big damage, all that good stuff. I talked about this build way too long. It's because it's my favorite build, because I'm always into dark technology, and I'll make a whole guide on this. If I'm able to make it work consistent, I'm not really able to make it work consistently, so we'll figure it out. But that's Ryze as a carry. Taric, he's just a tanky unit. He's really nice. So yeah. People get baited by Taric positioning though. Let me just say, the amount of times I've seen Taric not cast, like let's say you're playing like I don't know, something like this. You're playing like something like this for your front line. People really want to position Taric in the middle, but if you don't have like a frozen heart or something, he actually just won't cast. Because you really want to position in the middle so you can get most value, because he heals your team and gives them armor. I find it's best to just put him in front, next to your front line, on the same side as your carry. Let's say you're playing this as your core front line or something. Because like if your Aphelios has to walk up, because he'll still be in the range for this, but you just want him to go off to get it on your front line, but you're really tempted to position him in the middle, but everyone dies and then he ults, is how I've seen it happen. So I would position him on the outside, even though it feels kind of awkward. But he's pretty decent. He's not bad. I definitely run him when I run 4 Knights, or a lot of times he'll just be a placeholder for like Rel or something, so you can get a better frontliner. But he's not bad. Velkoz, one of the premier carries in the game. His best items are going to be this. Sojun is absolutely his best item. Basically, when you play Velkoz, you need him to cast 2 times. He's not like Asol, where Asol will cast 1 time and he full wipes the board. Usually Velkoz needs to cast 2 times. And so you want to have a core of these 2 items, right? This could be a death cap, could be whatever, it could be a shadow, JG. Play around a core of this, and then your third item can be more damage. Your third item can be that. It can be a GA. It can be whatever. I like Gunblade a lot because usually when he's casting his second time, he's like all on his lonesome, so it can be a little spooky. If you don't have healing, because he just won't out damage Aphelios quick enough. And like Aphelios or Draven will just kill him while he's in his channel. Whereas if you had Gunblade, you would lifesteal enough and kill them in the channel, because you actually out DPS. But without the healing, your DPS comes out a little bit slower on the front end. So yeah, that's what his build is typically going to look like. You play around the core of Sojun in this. Typically what a lot of people do is they slam a Jeweled Gauntlet early game, and if they get a Sojun, they play Velkoz. If they get a blue buff, they play Karma. Doesn't mean you can't play Velkoz without blue buff, or just more AP. It's not going to feel as good. And you play around a core of Rel Nautilus, which is going to be a really common front line that you'll play around. You'll play around a core of Rel Nautilus, and usually, and then you'll just play Lux. You'll play around this core. And this gives you 3 redeemed, and then you just slot in Mystics, a Spellweaver, Zyra is typically your Spellweaver if you want to play Spellweaver, but you absolutely don't have to. I like just playing Velkoz with just like tons of frontline. I actually don't even care that much about Zyra, but Zyra is actually a really good unit, so if you can fit her in, she does feel really nice and gives you the Spellweaver bonus. Basically, what Spellweaver gives you. It gives you a rod and a half. And then by the end of the fight, basically gives you 2 rods, gives you 40 AP. So it's not bad for sure, and she's a really good unit. So it just gives you a couple rods on your carry. Just gives you a little bit more AP. And you definitely want to have some chalices if you can onto your Velkoz. It feels very nice. But I typically just like to run 3 redeemed with a bunch of Ironclads, Mystics, and a Zyra. It's typically what I like to play, and that build can be really nice. Basically, you just want a lot of stall for your guy. The only time I run 6 redeem personally is if I have redeem spat, I will run 6 redeem because it is really, really, really nice. I mean, just read it. It's insane. And then you just play like Syndra. You play like this core, and you play like Syndra KO because those are really good units. And then you don't have to play the other trash, or maybe you play Leona. Maybe you're playing like a 4 Knights build with your thing. I've done that before because I had redeem spat. But I would never run 6 redeemed without redeem spat unless I got like a random 2-star KO and I got like a 2-star rel already, and I know I can build a really solid front line with having redeemed units in there. But I don't look for 6 redeems, so you don't have to like all game sit there and hold like a Varus because you're like, what if I get a 6 redeemed angle? Just play around these. Just play around the core of this one, and this one, and you'll be fine. And you can play 6 redeemed if you want to. But I personally wouldn't recommend. Okay, Darius. Darius is mostly he's a really, really, really strong unit. He gives you Knight, he gives you Nightbringer, and he has God King, obviously. Typically, you just play your random tank items on him, just whatever items you have. And because you just want him to cast a couple times in a fight. If you can get 2 cast off, it's really, really lit. You can run Darius with, he's obviously best with Aphelios, and you just item hold like Sejuani and then transfer the items, or maybe even a Mordekaiser, and you transfer the items over to your Darius once you hit him. He's obviously best with him, but if you're running any other AD build, like you can fit him into a Jax build, especially if you're running 3 skirmishers. I like to run Darius with him because what Darius does, he basically has a last whisper on his ultimate and he applies it on 3 people. So you just want him to ult twice. And you can also run him with Draven. So any of the AD builds he fits in, but he fits in most nicely with Aphelios. Another reason why Aphelios is OP, because the best units fit into his build. Like Morgana, Darius, all that good stuff. Alternatively, you can carry Darius. Like you can do something like, you need some survivability. He does heal on his ultimate, but it's really not enough. You can do something like this and just put him on the edge. And he can actually be a decent second carry to Aphelios, Draven, or Jax. But that's pretty niche because that would just be if you hit those items. I would never like look to find secondary carry items for Darius. Just if I hit those items. Because like Darius, it gets so much value just from tank items as well. Garen is basically the same thing, but for AP champions. He shreds magic resist. You play him in Karma build for sure, and then other magic damage builds, if you can fit him in, you fit him in. He's a really, really good unit. You just put tank items on him. I just like a GA and some I don't know, some random tank bullshit is really good. I've never really ran him as a carry. I've ran Darius as a carry before, as a second carry. I'm sure Garen can be a secondary carry. I just haven't ran it or seen other people run it. But he fits really, really nicely in Karma build, and then you just toss him in with Velkoz build as well because he shreds MR. You know, if you just 2-star him, you could just be really solid legendary. Maybe you play like 4 Knight as your front line, which sometimes like that's how the dice rolls. Like typically you want to play around Ironclad and Mystic, but sometimes you just like have a 2-star Thresh, a 2-star Nautilus, and you just hit a random 2-star Garen or Darius, like, and you're just like, well, I guess I'm just gonna play 4 Knights, and you have a 2-star Taric already. Like sometimes the stars align, but typically I don't look to play like a Knight build late game. But he does fit. He is a really good unit. But he's specifically good in Karma build and decent in Velkoz build. And in Renewer build. Okay, Heimerdinger. Typically, you don't play Heimerdinger as a carry. He's more of a secondary carry, but you can carry Heimerdinger for sure. It's just kind of hard to hit because it's way easier to hit Karma because she's a 4 cost. But there's a 4 Renewer build out there. I honestly don't play a lot of 4 Renewer builds. So if you want to look up a Renewer build, you can. I'm not really the guy to do that. I don't play a lot of this build. But typically, Heimerdinger is just really good because he has Morello on his ultimate. And so he's just really insane. You can also use his turret to like defend your team. So you can have, I'm just going to indicate this as another Heimerdinger. You can use Heimerdinger to like protect your karma or something, you know, because you'll have this turret right here. Like you could do something like that. But positioning for his turret is you typically want it like far to one side and second rowing is really nice. There's still a lot of people live and they're positioning like crazy, you really don't know where to put it. You just put it center middle or all the way back center, and it'll just hit most of the board. But you typically just want it on the opposite side of the carry because it'll typically come out like this. Sometimes you'll get fucked and it'll just go straight, and that's really terrible. But most of the time, it's really good just all the way on one side. I like second rowing it if I have a really beefy front line in front of it, and it can live. But anyways, Heimerdinger is Umbrello. He's really good. He fits really good in Karma build. Because you're running that Soraka, you're running Ivern, you're running that stuff. So it's really easy to fit in for Renewer. So he's a really good secondary carry and Karma build specifically. But if you can splash him in for Morello, he's really nice. Kale is really good. Kale, if you hit a 2-star Kale, it's the most capped board you can hit. It's definitely the strongest board if you hit, but it's just pretty hard to hit because you have to go 9. But if you can do a fast 9 transition to Kale, it's very nice. And her best items, like, honestly, it's something like this. It's straight up just something like this. Whoops. It's something like this. A lot of people get baited and try to play like super aggressive items on her. But if your Kale, basically, if your Kale doesn't get fully ascended and gets a bunch of autos off, you're going to lose. So you just need to find a way to get to that point, and GA can offer you that. Honestly, you don't need RFC. Honestly, you can just play like a Warmogs or something. You just need KO to get ascended and to be able to get a couple autos off. So don't get baited by like building like set 4 KO, like a bunch of Rage Blades and shit. Just build one AP item and just survivability, and just make sure you have a really, really beefy front line that's going to have a lot of stall. ZZ Rots are really good with her. You just need her to get ascended, and once she's ascended, you can't lose if she like gets a bunch of autos off. If you're able to protect her, so she can't lose. Also, she can be a Legionnaire to run with Draven if you don't want to run. If you hit it and you don't want to run Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser is really good. Kindred is really good in a Aphelios build. Also, Jack, if you just hit Kindred, she's just really solid. Kindred 1 and Kindred 2 are very similar. Wolf can actually deal a lot of damage if you end up like stacking AP on her. It doesn't really do much for Kindred, but it actually makes Wolf a lot stronger. But typically, you just give her leftover items. Just give her items like. Or Sojun Rageblade is really good, but she fits in really nice with Aphelios. Obviously, she's Ranger, but she can just go into any build as a Mystic as well. Really strong unit. Teemo, he kind of sucks. He might get buffed. He's an Invoker, but he's just like 4 Invoker is not very good. And typically, you just wouldn't run him because you're going to be running Karma and Ivern, and it costs you 18 health to buy. Honestly, the way that I use him is if I really need to get a certain upgrade in my build and I don't have money, I'll just exchange my health for him. But you can run Teemo as a carry for sure. I've seen Teemo carry pop off, but it's a little bit more niche because just 18 health is a lot of health to lose to get a carry, when like at the same time you could be hitting Heimerdinger, and it's just like I'd rather be playing Heimerdinger. You know what I mean? It doesn't cost me all that health, and I think Heimerdinger is just better. But he is really strong, and he may get changed he is really strong. He's just not worth the cost. I usually just use him to get more money. Like if games, especially when you're win streaking, you're going fast 9, and you just hit a Teemo and you're at 80 HP, and you're just like, oh my god, that's 6 gold. Just make the 6 gold. It's so nice. So if I'm really far ahead, I always buy and sell. It feels really nice. We already talked a little about Viego, but he's super good. Even if he doesn't kill, you just have to scout every round to try to get Viego onto their carry. So if the enemy has an Aphelios, even if he doesn't kill, he'll still CC him for like 5 seconds, which is really, really, really insane value. But if you want to carry him, he's not very good as a carry, like primary carry, but like that Ryze build that I run, he's kind of like, basically that Ryze build that I run, I have 3 carries, but none of them deal a lot of damage because it's Diana, Viego, and Ryze, but they all deal enough damage to make up for it. And so if you want to play him as a carry, you can do something like this. You have Assassinating, so you have like Diana. You just have that, this, and maybe like Spark can actually be really good because he deals magic damage. Sojun is not bad. But honestly, I don't mind putting like Gunblade on him. Or Shadow Hodge, because his first channel at the beginning of the fight will just deal an insane amount of damage. And he'll be healing. So something like this is like, if you want to carry him, will look like this. But he can't true carry. He really can't. He needs like Draven or Diana or Ryze or somebody else to like deal the more consistent damage for him. Because he's a little bit hit or miss. Like some fights he'll deal like 10k damage, some fights he'll just instantly die. Okay, now we got the fucking king. We got Volibear. He's probably the best unit in the game. I mean, honestly, Morgana is probably the best unit in the game, but as an actual like one-to-one unit, he's definitely the best unit in the game. I just say Morgana because she's a 3 cost. She fits into every build, but if you get a 2-star Volibear and you just put this item on him, you toss an Ivern in your build, and it's a wrap. Like, you'd solo frontline his ass. He's going to ult. By the way, if he dies and he is the GA from Revenant, his ult completes during death animation. So you could just solo frontline him, just get one ult off, and he'll Morello the entire board. It is really, really, really nuts. He is so insane. He's really good in Karma build. Or if you just hit a 2-star Ivern and you hit a Volibear, you can basically play it in any build. Even in some of the other builds that I've been playing, I've played a Renewer Ryze build where I played around Volibear, and I only did that just because I hit Volibear. So if you hit a Volibear 2-star, you hit a really early Volibear, just play around your Volibear and put a Morello on him. It's really insane. Items like this can be really good. Like, you just do, like, dude, like if you got this. If you got this and you have a decent carry and stuff, like, you're going first. And this is a 2-star, you're absolutely going first with an item set up like this. Yeah. Anyways, that is every single unit, it looks like. So that is a unit, that is a guide to every single unit, how I've been using them on PvE. I hope I helped you guys. And we talked a little bit about comps. I'll make another video where I actually make like a comps video. But we did talk about some core pieces that you run in each of the carries. So I hope you guys got a lot out of that. If you guys don't know, I'm a Challenger player. And I stream almost every day, unless I'm working on a lot of YouTube, then I won't. But I stream most days, and that's primarily where most of my content is on Twitch. And I mostly just make content on here whenever I feel like it, or whenever I feel like I have something to say, or I'll upload my VODs here, stuff like that. So if you guys want more of me, that's the best place to catch me is twitch.tv/TrajanTFT. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it. I appreciate all of you for staying and watching this whole video if you made it this far, and I hope you guys learned. If you did stick around this long, make sure to let me know in the comment section, because that'd be lit. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Bye bye. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.